Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast Strikes Back. My name is George, and you're listening to our review of Fate of the Furious, aka The Fast and the Furious 8. How exciting is that? Joining me today, as usual, is Connor.
Hello.
And Benjamin.
Ride or die.
Rightio, this is it. Number 8, the final installment in the Fast and Furious franchise.
There's 2 more, George.
Isn't there 3 more after this?
Look, they're going to keep going forever.
I thought 9, 10, 11 was a little trilogy.
I thought you were trying to get to 12.
Yeah. Anyway.
They're never going to stop.
That was meant to be a joke. Obviously failed on every account.
I'd like to start us out by saying I fucking love this film so much. This movie for me is a movie that it knows what it is so much. My thing with Fast and Furious is that they found a level of absurdity where they could pretty much do just about anything. And as long as they kept it absurd enough, I was down for it. Because there's no like breaking reality or anything, because this franchise reality is broken. Like there's just none of it makes sense.
It's a cartoon at this point.
Yeah, essentially.
But I thought they roped it in a little bit in this one, which is something that I liked, and I thought they brought it, particularly in the front half, more back to cars. I particularly like that opening sequence in Cuba and that whole scene there. And I thought they brought it back to cars. The last few seem to have been even more crazy than this one. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I will correct you if you're wrong, because I believe you are wrong.
So you think this one is the most crazy? Because I thought when Vin Diesel drove through 3 skyscrapers in number 7, that was absolutely absurd.
There's no way that was more ridiculous than the driverless cars in this one.
Yeah.
The zombies.
Yeah,
Mate.
I guess.
Come on, submarine. No, hold on. We're ignoring the elephant in the room here, George. Isn't this your most hated franchise ever?
Yeah, you were talking some pretty big smack before.
You legitimately did not want to review this film.
I was not looking forward to this at all.
Yeah.
I am so fatigued by this franchise. And going in, I just wasn't excited for it. And darn tootin' today showed me how to make a movie with the cars. I really loved, particularly the first half of this film. I thought it was fun. And as you said, it knows what it is. It did what it needed to do. I was on board. I was enjoying it. Later on, I was a little fatigued, as you do. These films just pummel you for so long with action sequences. And by the 90-minute mark, the 3/4 mark, I'm like, okay, this is wrapping up. You know, we're going to go through these formalities of the last sequence. And first half was much better than the second half. But actually, I stand corrected on how I went into this. I enjoyed it so much more than I expected to.
Now, you two went to see this together, which is nice for you two to get some alone time. It's really cool. And I heard in advance, actually, that you had enjoyed this film after weeks of smack talking it. And I had thought maybe you hadn't seen any of the Fast and Furious movies since they essentially became a parody of themselves, but you've seen just about every one, haven't you?
I've seen everyone except, I think I haven't seen Fast 5, which was The Rock, the first one that The Rock was in. I think I've seen every other one.
Okay, all right, that makes sense, because Fast 5 was really when this franchise became what it is now in a lot of ways, and that was really when a lot of people were like, wow, when did this happen? We've been ignoring this franchise since the first one, which was fine, and then suddenly it's this huge, bombastic, crazy, cartoony action franchise. But that would make sense because that was a cool one. And then 6 one, I think, improved on that even. And that's probably the high watermark of the series for a lot of people. And 7, I think, was not, that had production troubles, obviously, and it was not quite there. But this one, I also loved, Connor. Absolutely loved it. I think this is my favorite one yet. I've only seen from 4 onwards. Despised 4, liked 5, really enjoyed 6, 7, not quite as much. But this one, I just loved from start to finish. I had such a good time.
One of the things I wanted to mention, just because we are talking about the franchise as a whole, was that for me, the first 3, and that includes, I guess, first 4? Where does Tokyo Drift sit
3.
in that? Is Tokyo Drift number 3?
And then 4 was so like,
confused.
we're getting the crew back together.
That's right.
Yeah, and it was shit.
1 to 3 was very much
Point Break with cars.
Yeah, it was like, you know, the streets, and it was very much about the cars. There was a lot of car talk. There was a lot of focus around, you know, all these different mods and whatever have you. And then for me, 4 was a growing pains type film.
For you personally?
Yeah. No, just in terms of the franchise, because it was going from this, I won't say grounded, because they're still, the first 3 are still ridiculous, but very much kind of contained films to something a little bit more ridiculous. And then number 5 is where you, as you said, it found kind of the direction it wanted to go. And it was
they
around,
fucking gunned it in that direction.
Yeah, and I think it was around 4 or 5. The moment I really fell in love with this franchise was around, I think, 5, which is where most people did, which is where suddenly they knew karate. Like they went from these like street thugs that could maybe kind of tussle to fucking ninjas with no context as to how that happened. They just suddenly became these planet-saving fucking
Special forces
type ninja people.
And now we're at the point where The Rock is the Hulk. And
He is the Hulk.
It just works.
so
like you look at him and you're like, yes, I believe he could punch a dent in that steel door.
But I mean, like, for me, that's like, they just went full bore crazy, makes zero sense, and that for me is the best thing a film can do. If the first 3 are not crazy enough to be enjoyable in that sense, they're grounded enough to be enjoyable as they are. The 5 onwards is ridiculous enough to be enjoyable because they play in that space. They just go full bore nuts.
They're superhero movies.
Yeah.
They're 100% superhero movies with cars.
Yep.
And they're doing it better than most superhero movies. Like, this is an Avengers film, and I loved it. It's like almost as good as the Avengers films.
They're a great team, aren't they? They've
Yeah,
got awesome on-screen chemistry. Everyone has their own role. And I particularly liked how The Rock always was in a Humvee in the bigger car. Everyone's in a sleek Lamborghini or something, and he's in, I'm The Rock. I'm in the big car. I'm in the Jeep. Yeah, I think there was a lot of Jeep and Chrysler product placements in this.
Non-stop product placement in this film. Suits it, though.
But I loved, doesn't it?
I loved how Vin Diesel sort of turned his back on the team and that dynamic, because the family thing has always been, I mean, they say family in this film like 18 times.
Family.
That family aspect of the film and the franchise as a whole was an integral part of the plot, which I really liked.
It was a good shakeup. And I think I was chatting to one of our friends who's actually been on the podcast, Nick. His biggest concern with it before he saw it was the reason that Dominic Toretto betrays his family. Is it stupid? Because it's so easily it could be that, he's mind control or any number of things that could have been happening. And one of the things that I thought that this film did really well, and I won't spoil it, but I thought that the reason that he did it, like, it felt good to me, like that it didn't feel like a cop out.
That was perfect. It made perfect sense. Like you never questioned why he was doing what he was doing at all, I think.
And it tied in with the concept.
Yeah.
It works within his character and the character that he's been set up to be up until this stage.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I know I said that I enjoy this film because it's ridiculous, but I felt like that would have been, I don't know why, but that if that had been pulled off lazily or stupidly, I feel like that would have really kind of let me down.
That was an important part of the film to get right.
It was the linchpin. It's the entire premise. Right?
There's certain things that these movies have to get right, and that was certainly one of them, and I think they nailed it. Like, this movie checks every box that it needs to check. Does it have...
It missed one very important one.
What did it miss?
This may be a spoiler for some people. They don't drink any Coronas, which was
You're right.
very disappointing. I think Budweiser is the new drink of choice.
I didn't even notice that.
I was sitting in the cinema with my Corona. I'm like, come on, let's go. Bitterly disappointing.
They probably just asked too much money of Corona.
I particularly liked Charlize Theron in this film.
She's cool.
As I said, in Top 8, which is our weekly movie show. Check that out. It comes out every Sunday. She was a very compelling villain. I liked her, the poise she brought to the role. And, in a lot of these films, we don't get very menacing villains or, compelling villains. And I thought she really ticked all the boxes. And I liked her performance. And I thought her dreadlocks were pretty cool as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking of villains, it was so good having Jason Statham back. I love that they brought him back from the last one. He was like hardcore in that last film, like in a movie that I didn't love. He was a real standout. And the second he showed up again, I was like, yes. And pairing him off with The Rock throughout, brilliant. We need a spin-off ASAP.
I was going to say the same thing. Their chemistry on screen and the banter between those guys is
Absolute
some of
banter.
my favorite scenes.
I think one of the standout scenes for me, and it's featured quite heavily in the trailer, is that prison scene where they're locked in together. That is probably, I think, my favorite little action sequence of the entire film, and they're back and forth.
That is my favorite action sequence of the year.
Oh,
I loved that scene so
such a
much.
good scene.
It's like Jason Statham just parkouring everywhere, and The Rock just being the Hulk, just
is the Hulk,
smashing,
yes.
smashing people
Just
around.
picking people up and throwing them at other people, and
But you believe it. You just believe it so much watching him. Yeah.
And for me, this kind of harks back to the fact that it's such a ridiculous franchise because they've just made The Rock into this superhuman being, and that not once do you kind of sit back and go, "Oh, that's ridiculous." You just go, "Yep, this fits in perfectly."
Okay, as a side note, I get so pissed at anyone who like sits there scoffing or questioning the logic of these movies. Like, they are cartoons. They can get away with anything in my mind. I don't give a shit.
hyper reality.
Yeah, and I think they have done worse than in this film.
Big
There's
time.
like, in terms of like people surviving car crashes and stuff, 7 was really pushing it to some weird places. But this one kind of reined it in maybe a little bit.
That's what I mean. That's what I said at the beginning, is this film did feel like it kept a little bit more of a lid on everything. It was still crazy. It was still over-bloated. Just everything seemed to be a little more contained, which I liked, and it helped me get into the film, particularly in the first scene in Cuba with the race car scene. I loved that scene, and it really got me into the film, and I loved how it brought it back to cars. I liked that, and it really set up the film I was on board with the film from that first scene, and when it went crazy after that, I was okay with it.
See, for me, that beginning scene was. I mean, when you say that it's about the cars, I kind of disagree with that, because the beginning scene for me was probably about as ridiculous as anything else in the film. The fact that, you know, some of the physics of what that car was doing.
No, man, it was the Cuban NOS.
Yeah. It was
that.
so, I mean, no, I loved it. Don't get me wrong. But as far as it being like harking back to an actual car film, or it being less ridiculous, some of the things in that, without going into too many spoilers, some of the things in that scene were utterly just doesn't even come close to what a car can
It
actually
was
do.
two dudes riding in cars.
Which I loved, again. But just not, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say that it's more grounded.
I'm not saying
or
that those other elements were there, but just the idea of him just racing.
Yeah.
It's the simplicity of that is what brought me into the film.
Did 6 and 7 have any of those? Did they just have like a
Pretty
street
sure
race?
They did. I'm pretty sure they did.
There must have been somewhere.
Yeah. Well, there's just like chases.
Was there a car?
Was it? Yeah.
Was there a car?
I think that's, at this point, that's just like the bare minimum that they're ticking. Like, is there like a Lambo in there somewhere? Or is there like, you know, a muscle car or something like that? And if they've got that, be like, sweet, it's still a car movie. Tick.
Favorite action sequences?
The whole thing. The last film really peaked in the middle somewhere in the Dubai stuff, I think, probably. I can't remember it that well. But this one I thought kind of kept ramping it up, and I just loved every one of them. That whole last scene, you've seen in the trailers with the submarine and everything in Russia. Awesome.
That's really brilliant thing about this film. Like, all these scenes are hilarious, but also at the same time, just fucking cool.
Just it's so much fun. Just unbridled joy on the screen.
Yeah.
Like, it's just refreshing, honestly.
My only complaint with this film was...
Oh, hey, mate, what are you talking about?
Particularly in that scene with all the zombie cars, and that whole part of the film just felt a bit labored. And that's fine. I mean, if that's the only complaint, and, you know, 3/4 of the way film, it goes through a bit of a lull. I mean, yeah, who cares? It's not the biggest deal, man. But that was my only complaint. And when it kicked back into the end, that last scene with the submarine and the end of the film, I was back on track.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. And as you said, I think this film really succeeds in what it wants to be. It knows what it wants to be, and it executes that to a T.
I completely agree with you that there was a bit of a lull about 3/4 of the way through. And I don't think you can really avoid that with a film like this. Like, if you're being relentlessly hit with
High octane.
type thing, at some point you're going to have to kind of come down a little bit. But, and again, as I agree with you, the end scene just really kind of ramped it back up, and I was on board. So
yeah, as a whole, I think the way I could best describe this movie is really confident. The last one felt a little more slapdash, and like they were just trying a bunch of different things. Maybe this one, just from beginning to end, it knew exactly what it was. It drew on the previous movies in the franchise in really interesting ways, I thought, and it just great direction from F. Gary Gray. I think very well put together, the whole thing.
Yeah. He did Straight Outta Compton, right?
Yeah.
So should we move into a bit of spoiler territory? I don't know if there's that many spoilers.
There's a few interesting ones in there.
One of the ones for me, straight off the bat, was I love how this franchise has taken quite like consistently its villains and just transfer them into good guys, making like this ensemble of like ex-bad guy to good guy.
The Dragon Ball Z rule.
I love how they somehow made audiences forget that he killed one of their friends.
Yeah, and a lot of other people.
Viciously.
He's a
other people, yeah.
bad guy, yeah.
They were all bad guy. Like if you think about Dom in the first three, here's this like ex-con who is a violent dude. Like he's not a good guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, no one in this franchise, apart from Paul Walker, was really a good guy. I'm not particularly a Paul Walker fan, but I mean, geez. I love how they just recycle. Like they take cool characters and they just make them part of this ensemble. I love how they took Jason Statham and they took Luke Evans and did that
great,
team up. Like
you can tell he didn't have a lot of time on set.
No, he did not. He was in like 2 scenes.
Yeah,
and that was
very
it.
very cool that they brought him back. Those little fucking fighter jet things, jetpacks they flew in on, awesome! Holy crap!
When I first saw that, I thought, oh, they got planes, and then I saw the little guys. in
Little
the I was
heads.
like, oh, fucking course they did.
And
Like,
I think we turned to each other and was just like, this is hectic, man.
it's so ridiculous, but I love every second of it.
Luke Evans was, it was a really nice surprise to see him back in there. Another great little moment.
Bit of a Luke Evans fan.
He just loves Gaston.
I can't really think of that many films that I've really enjoyed that he's been in. I didn't like The Hobbit, any of them. I kind of like Beauty and the Beast. What else has he been in? Dracula Untold, I didn't see that.
He played Zeus in
Gods of Egypt.
No, it was kind of the Clash of Titans,
The Immortals.
The Immortals,
Yeah.
which is a fun little film that I enjoyed. I guess
It looks really nice.
Anyway, he was in this movie for 3 seconds. We don't need to go on a whole tangent about him. That Jason Statham scene at the end with the baby.
Oh,
amazing!
So
just
good. So good.
Amazing. Like up until that point in the movie, he's still kind of like wasn't a bad guy. But after that scene, it's like, okay, make the franchise about him.
Yeah.
Like this is Crank 3.
I love how this franchise is like. It just kind of puts a setting that is not considered a ridiculous scene in this.
No,
that it just fits so seamlessly in there, and seeing him do this little cuts to the baby where he goes, "Hope you're okay," type thing, and thinking in my mind, I should find this ridiculous, and I should find this cheesy. But I don't. I really, really love it.
It's a testament to how F. Gary Gray really just knew what to execute in this film. It's meant to be overloaded. It's meant to be crazy. And yeah, I totally agree with you. That's one of the best scenes in the film. It's so fun.
That's what I'm saying about confidence. Like there's in the same set piece, we have The Rock like turning a torpedo around on the ice and throwing it back at the bad guys. And this scene where Jason Statham kills 20 dudes while holding a baby bassinet. It's amazing.
Just thinking about this film makes me just happy.
Yeah. Apparently, actually, there was a credit scene shot with The Rock and Jason Statham's characters. There may be a spin-off in the works, but there's been a lot of beef in some of these movies between Vin Diesel and The Rock, apparently.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys have followed any of this.
Is that true, though?
Yeah, I mean, there's been stuff on Twitter from the actual actors themselves.
But I feel like The Rock knows how these guys know how to play the PR game with.
But
Twitter.
yeah. But nonetheless, apparently this scene was shot, and Vin Diesel wasn't told about it, and he may have nixed it. There was a recall of some of the prints in the States, I think.
Okay,
and they took the scene back out supposedly. But anyway, my point is, we need that Hobbs and Jason Statham spin-off. Yes. Holy crap!
100%.
Again, their prison scene just so good. And then when they finally have a laugh together in that scene where they're lifting the engine, they're like, yeah. It's like, fuck yeah.
I really wish I'd had The Rock as a soccer coach.
Or
prep school.
Doing the
I think
haka.
I'd be a lot better person these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like I should be more angry by the way that The Rock is used in Hollywood. You just chuck him into a franchise, you just chuck him into a movie, and it's like printing money. He's so good and fucking just lovable.
I can totally understand why Vin Diesel hates him. Like, he's stealing his franchise from out from under him.
Yeah.
Like, Vin Diesel, he's there and he's trying. not doing a great job, but he's trying, God damn it. But yeah, The Rock is just so effortlessly charming.
But the cool thing about The Rock is he didn't have it easy. He has had some duds along the way, and he's just hard work, perseverance. He's made his way to the top, and he is the guy now.
Yeah.
Was he highest earning?
Yeah.
Really?
Highest earning actor in Hollywood. Yeah.
Wow.
Not surprising.
You ever took Downey Jr.?
There was it was a few years back. It was when he had G.I. Joe and a bunch of other stuff come out that one year. There was a Fast movie as well.
He just makes movies successful. That what was that disaster film, San Andreas?
Yeah.
Which is by all accounts just a terrible film, but you put The Rock in it and I will go see it.
Yeah.
Look, ultimately this movie is nothing but ridiculous and nothing but fun. It's probably one of my most enjoyed films of the year.
Same, yeah.
If I was 10 years old, man, this is heaven.
Hell, this is heaven for me now. This movie will keep you young.
Proven. Scientifically proven.
This movie is actually on track to become one of the highest grossing movies of all time at this point. I think the last one maybe did not do quite as well as the previous one.
It's outpacing The Force Awakens, isn't it?
Yeah, if the estimations are correct, it will overtake The Force Awakens.
Wow.
Opening weekend, yeah.
I kind of hope it does.
Fuck yeah.
Imagine if this one overtook Avatar.
Man, these movies are such a global hit. Like, they're tapping into a market that is just not being serviced elsewhere, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but this is the thing. Like, you have kind of like meathead, shitty movie consumers that are going to love this. You have people that like
film connoisseurs like ourselves.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say film connoisseurs, but like
elite.
But like, all right, the fact that all three of us are so down for this film and we have such kind of varied tastes in movies means that it is striking a chord with just about everyone. I think it makes sense that if this is the most successful movie on the planet, it makes sense.
I hope it kicks Avatar off. That would be
so do I.
So sweet.
So do I.
That'd be amazing.
You know, Vin Diesel just walking around with the biggest fucking hard-on ever. Just like loving life now.
Vin Diesel is the biggest hard-on ever. Look at him. I love the naming conventions of this series.
Or non-conventions.
Really excellent, aren't they?
The Fast and the Furious 2, Tokyo Drift, Fast and Furious, Fast 5, Furious 6, whatever 7 was called, and then Fate of the Furious. Where do they go from here?
The 9th of the Furious.
Yeah.
9th of the Furious.
9 furious people.
For 9 of the Furious.
It would be something like that. Yeah.
Well, that's it for our The Fate of the Furious review, guys. We're on iTunes. We're on YouTube. Please subscribe to all of the channels that we have.
He's lost it. He's gone.
Social media. We have our weekly show Top 8 up, which goes up every Sunday, and we'll have our review for the indie kaiju film Colossal up on Thursday. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Connor.
Bye-bye.
And Benny.
There ya.